తర్వాతి అంశం ఇద్దరు కలిసి ప్రసంగిస్తున్నారండి. శ్రీ అయ్యగారి సీతారాం గారు, శ్రీ రాజ్ వేదం గారు. సీతారాం గారు మనందరికీ సుపరిచితులు. వీరు హ్యూస్టన్ వాసులు. మా పక్క వీధిలోనే ఉంటారు. వీరు మా సంగీతం గురువుగారు కూడాను. సంగీతంలోనూ, వేదంలోనూ నిష్ణాతులు వీరు. ప్రాచీన భారతదేశంలోని వివిధ అంశాల మీద వీరు ఆసక్తితోటి పరిశోధన చేస్తున్నారు. కొన్ని పరిశోధనా పత్రాలు కూడా సమర్పించారు. అలాగే వీరితో పాటు మాట్లాడుతున్నటువంటి రాజ్ వేదం గారు ఆర్ష విద్య సత్సంగ అనే సంస్థకు డైరెక్టర్ గా వ్యవహరిస్తున్నారు. వీరు చాలా సుపరిచితులండి. అంటే ఈ రంగం మీద ఆసక్తి ఉన్న వారికి. వీరు సైంటిఫిక్ వాలిడేషన్ ఆఫ్ నారేటివ్స్ ఆన్ హిస్టరీ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా, అంటే నిజమైన భారతదేశ చరిత్ర ఏమిటి, హిందూయిజం అంటే ఏమిటి, ఇప్పుడు చరిత్రని ఇన్నేళ్ల బట్టి ఎలా మన భారతదేశ చరిత్ర వక్రీకరింపబడింది, ఇటువంటి విషయాల మీద అనేక ఆధారాలతో కూడినటువంటి సహేతుకమైన పరిశోధన చేస్తున్నారు అనేక సంవత్సరాలుగా. వీరు ఈ విషయాల మీద 100కు పైగా ఉపన్యాసాలు ఇచ్చారండి. వీరి ఉపన్యాసాలు అవి మీకు యూట్యూబ్ లో దొరుకుతాయి, రాజ్ వేదం అని కొడితేను. ఇట్లాగే ఈ మధ్య చాలా మంది ప్రముఖులు, మనకు రాజీవ్ మల్హోత్రా గారు కానీ ఇలాంటి వారందరూ కూడా అసలైన భారతదేశ చరిత్ర ఏమిటి అన్న విషయం మీద చాలా కూలంకషంగా పరిశోధన చేస్తున్నారు. వారిలో వీరొకరు. అలాగే శ్రీ అయ్యగారి సీతారాం గారు కూడా రాజ్ వేదం గారితో కలిసి పనిచేస్తున్నారు ఈ విషయాల మీద. వారు ఇవాళ హిందూ దేవతలు ఐరోపా వాసుల అనే ఒక అత్యంత ఆసక్తికరమైన అంశం మీద ప్రసంగించబోతున్నారు. వారిద్దరి ప్రసంగం అయిపోయాక మీకు ఏమైనా సందేహాలు ఉంటే కూడా వారిని అడగచ్చు. ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అండ్ ఆన్సర్ సెషన్ లాంటిది చేస్తాము చివరిలో. సీతారాం గారు.
నమస్కారం అండి. Dr. Raj?
Yes.
Are you here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So quickly I'll introduce Dr. Raj Vedam. He's also my neighbor, our neighbor. He's also in KT, and he does a lot of research and straightening the history of India, the true history of India. He is actually a warrior because we were being deceived, sidetracked on our history to kill our psyche, discredit all of our ancestors' work and whatnot. I mean, he will introduce all that. I just wanted to introduce him. So he has been doing for more than a decade. For some reason, he is very passionate. Not passionate. He's determined, like many of us, to bring forth the true history and proud history of Hindu Akhanda Bharat. Let's put Akhanda Bharat when we speak, and Bharat when we speak about India, that is Bharat. That's one of the vratas we took up. So we took over. So anyway, so we will start this presentation. It is to counter the misinterpretations done by the Westerners, and which is more popular than whatever ancients, whatever the traditional knowledge being passed on to us. So this is all traditional knowledge only within India, and this Western knowledge is in India as well as the rest of the world. So that's the biggest problem, and how they misinterpreted and how they undervalued our Vedas, and how they made fun out of it, and how they created the mythology concept and imposed upon us and all kinds of stuff. With this, I will introduce. I will give the stage to Dr. Raj Vedam. He will start the presentation, and he will give it to me. Then I will present a couple of examples. How badly those are misinterpreted and misled our ancient knowledge. So, Dr. Raj Vedam.
Thank you, Sitaram Garu, and thank you, Indrani ji, and my namaskaram to everybody over here.
Namaskaram, Raj Vedam Garu.
Namaskaram.
I know you don't understand Telugu, but I introduced you in Telugu. But yeah, since Sitaram Garu also introduced you in English, so everybody now they know who you are. And welcome to this session. And we know that you are an intellectual Kshatriya, and we are very proud and we are very happy about that, to see people like you. Thank you so much for being with us. Please start your presentation. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. So please first give me the screen sharing privilege, because I don't have screen sharing privilege. So if the host can give the privilege, I can get started. You may have to promote me as a speaker or as host.
Sudesh.
I made you into host, Rajgaru.
Okay, I can see. Thank you. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, we can see.
So once again, my pranams to all the people who are in the audience here. Thank you very much. So our talk is going to be based on the subject European origin of Vedic deities. And Sitaram Garu and myself are neighbors in KT, and we discuss a lot on these subjects. And when the Waves conference came up, we thought we need to increase the awareness of readers on some of these topics over here. So that is the motivation for this work. So the outline, I will briefly give an outline of the problem that we have selected to highlight over here. I will go on to show what are the frameworks used for Indology, basically the historiography. Historiography is a study of history itself. How was history addressed when talking about India, and who are the agencies? I'll talk about that. Then I'll finally go to the subject that we have in this paper, which is Indo-European parallels with Vedic deities and some of the claims that people are making, supporting a kind of a history narration. At that point, Sitaram Garu will take over, and he'll show questions we have taken up on Sanskrit translations and some failed translations which have added to the battlefield, if you will, and we'll take it to the conclusions. So very first, today we are at a point in India where we see a lot of people unable to connect to their history, unable to connect to their culture, unable to connect to their past, unable to even understand some of the contents of their ancestors. We have a tendency today to mock our traditions, mock our past, mock our scriptures, religion, philosophy, and everything. And the question that we must ask is, why has this happened? Why has this happened, and how are we in this position? What we see is, in India, the history that our ancestors have known have always come from things like Itihasas, from the Puranas, Sthala Puranas, and the genealogies maintained by different villages and temples and others. So this has been our understanding of history for a very long time. What we find is that when the British came to India, they wanted to write a history of India for their civil servants. And so they first started with what we call the colonial narrator. So they came in 1700s, 1800s with a certain kind of thinking. In their thinking, they thought that God created the world in 4004 BCE. So nothing could have existed before God's creation. Second, they thought that God destroyed the world in Noah's flood in 3000 BCE. So any history that we have must be after 3000 BCE and following from Noah's sons. So when they came to India and they observed the Puranic records and chronology and genealogies, they saw enormous timelines, and they couldn't even understand, where does Indian history begin, where does it end, and what relation does it have with Western history. So they imposed their lenses on Indian history, and they said, they looked at the Greek records, and Megasthenes, they found somebody called Sandrikotos. Megasthenes had met somebody called Sandrikotos. So they phonetically tried to see in the Purana chronology what is the nearest name, and then they said Chandragupta Maurya, he has to be Sandrikotos, and they made an anchor, a synchronism point. But by doing that, they distorted Puranic history, because in the Puranic chronology, Chandragupta Maurya must be at least about 1000 years earlier than 300 BCE. Whereas in the Greek tradition, Sandrikotos was in, Megasthenes was in 300 BCE. So by doing this false synchronism, they introduced the first set of distortions. Second, they went through a process of taking the Purana chronology, moving some kings from there to here, moving some from here to there, saying those are all mythical kings, they don't exist, and so on. And they cut down a huge chronology down to a narrow, small chronology to suit their narrator. So this introduced enormous distortions. Now, this was followed by William Jones, who, when he came to India, he studied Sanskrit, and he found that Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek have seem to be related. And he asked a question, how is that possible? And so they brought about the idea that there's somebody called Aryan. These people must have been related in the past, and that is why these languages are related. And he brought about the idea of Aryans. Max Muller and others, they added to that narrative, and you have a colonial narrative thereon, starting with the biblical chronology imposed in India. Addition to that, to talk about commonality of languages, they brought in the notion of Aryan. This was soon followed by the Eurocentric narrative in the 1800s, 1900s, and so on. European scholars, they wanted to ask, who are they as a people? They observed William Jones' commonality of Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek, and they wanted to know who are the Germans, who are the French, who are the Spanish, who are the various people. And in doing so, they brought about the linguistic analysis. That field of linguistics was born, where they studied sets of languages, words from different languages, and they tried to see how are these languages related to each other. And by doing that, they proposed that they all have an ancestor. And this ancestor was given the name Proto-Indo-European. So from Proto-Indo-European, they suggested that all the languages that you see in Europe and in India, these are all related, and they saw them as daughter languages of that ancestor language. The problem is there is no evidence anywhere for this Proto-Indo-European language. Neither is there script, neither is there any kind of records or any such thing present over here. This was followed in Europe by also a hot debate on where is the homeland. You have said that there is a language called PIE, but where did these speakers live? So that caused a lot of debate in Europe in 1900s, where German Aryanism, some Germans said maybe it's Germany was a homeland. Some people said maybe Syria or somewhere is a homeland, Armenia is a homeland. Some people said Southern Caucasus region in Russia is a homeland. Some people finally said maybe Central Asia, that is a homeland. So finally now, academia suggested Central Asia is a homeland between Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, and this people called Yamnaya. So around 3000 BC, they domesticated the horse, and once they domesticated the horse and invented iron swords, they were able to conquer the world. So this is the narrative. Eurocentric narratives are brought about in India. At the same time, they also said there are two language families in India. They said one language family is the Indo-European language family, derived from Proto-Indo-European. Other one is what they call the Dravidian family. So once they suggested there are two language families in India, the missionaries jumped on that because they wanted to have this divisive narrative of India, which is based upon the Brahminical priests have suppressed the lower classes. That kind of a narrative came into India around when the missionaries also came in. They use a linguistic narrative to also use it with Aryan invasion, with the Eurocentric people came about with. They said that Aryans invaded India and they imposed their Vedic culture in India. And that is why the Dravidian people were backward, primitive, poor, and suppressed, and all those kind of things. So the missionaries wanted to convert the Southern Indian. One way to convert a Southern Indian was to remove them from the Vedic culture. To remove them from the Vedic culture, they introduced the idea of Brahminical patriarchy, Brahminical pejoratives on these things, and how the Southerners were oppressed. So by introducing oppressor kind of views, by introducing anger in the poorer sections of society, they tried to remove them from the Vedic culture and try to convert them to Christianity. So that's their narrative. Now, ever since India got independence, one will think that these three narratives would have gone. Unfortunately, we inherited Nehruvian socialism, also called Fabianism. So these people have an inbuilt philosophy where they're working towards a classless utopian society. That is their fantasy, a classless utopian society. In order to do that, they want to get rid of the old order. And the old order is Hinduism. So they feel that by getting rid of Hinduism, we'll be able to bring in this classless society where everybody is equal and these kind of ideas. So Nehru ensured that there is a break from the past. There is a break from the past, meaning that we cannot connect ourselves with the classical civilization of India. 1947 India is a new country, a new republic is born, and this new republic does not have any connection with the past, does not own anything from the past, and everything is looked with a certain kind of lens. That has progressively become a worse and worse narrative as we go on forward. We see academia today imports sociological lenses from the Western experience and imposes them on India. We are seeing that happening today. The angry white male has become the Brahmin male. In the Western society, the angry white male is responsible for slavery, the Christian male for slavery, for wars, for violence, genocides, all these kind of things. The Indian academics take that model and force fit it on India and use it as a Brahmin male who's patriarchal and privileged, and all these narratives have come from them with the oppressor-oppressed narrative. All of NCERT textbooks or SCERT textbooks is filled with this kind of a narrative where every social dynamics in India has been broken down in these sociological lenses of saying who is the oppressed, who is the oppressor, and this kind of angry narrative is there in the leftist academia. Finally, since 1971 or so, Indira Gandhi, for political survival, she made a pact with the communists, and for political survival, the communists wanted the control of education sector, and so they demanded that and they got it. So since 1970, many leftist and Marxist institutions have come up in the country where they have all been occupied only by people with a Marxist narrative. The Marxist people, the only difference between socialism and Marxism, communism, is that the communists believe that change will be a bloody revolution. They want to destroy the old order with violence, a revolution. Whereas the socialists believe it can be done within the democratic framework. Otherwise, there's no difference between them. So that is what we're seeing. So I put this in a picture over here saying that Indian history has been controlled by the Marxists, by the missionaries, by the colonials, Eurocentric academia. And I asked, who's missing in the table? The person missing in the table is a practitioner of history. The practitioner, the person, the insider living in this country, the scholar, the Hindu and others are not allowed at this table. Adhikara has been removed. Only foreign lenses are allowed at the table to write Indian history. This is the tragedy of us. And this summarizes everything I said. Early colonial scholars were motivated by a desire to uphold biblical chronology, show Indians as inferior to Europeans. Then the linguistic analysis came about to show the commonality of languages. It led to a PIE homeland in Central Asia. Plus, they wanted to show the superiority of white science, white culture, philosophy, religion, and so on. So a lot of the translations that they made of Sanskrit and other works were driven by this kind of a desire for European supremacy. Now, this PIE theory resulted in this Aryan invasion theory. As a consequence, they assumed that Dravidians are different people. And the missionaries, like I said, Caldwell, G.U. Pope, and many others, they desired to convert southern India, and they tried to exploit these differences. Leftist academia, like I said, it privileges alien sociological lenses, study Indian history and culture, resulting in oppressor-oppressed divisive narrative. Finally, the Marxists desired to subvert and destroy Indic identity. So in a nutshell, we can say this. When the Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, the colonialists came to India, they got the colonial hegemony. And Dutch and the Portuguese are more like the Taliban of today. They were only interested in destroying, killing, robbing, and things of that nature. The Dutch, French, and British were also interested in subverting the social order. They were interested in taking over the knowledge system, subverting. So this came hand in hand with Christian imperialism from 1500s onwards, through people like Caldwell, Pope, and hundreds of other missionaries. This came hand in hand with Eurocentrism, which brought about the field of linguistics, which brought about the field of anthropology. For example, people like Herbert Risley, who used discredited race science methods to measure the length and width of the nose and then say what race they are. Risley also encoded the idea of caste. Caste is a foreign word in India. We don't know what caste means. We know very well what Jati Varna means. We have no idea what caste is. Caste is a word that is from casta in Portuguese. It is something for the European experience. However, he brought it, force-fitted it into India because he was a census commissioner. In 1901, he was a census commissioner. they forced Indians 30 years before that and after, they forced every Indian to declare a caste, and they stratified it. They made sure that the caste definition does not change. So they introduced several distortions in the Indian social system by this notion of caste. So these three forces conspired and have formed this Aryan invasion migration theory. And like I said, today that has been entrenched because of the academia bringing in outsider sociology to study all of these frameworks and fortifying with archaeology. When Marshall, he discovered this Harappa civilization, and people like Maria Gimbutas, Colin Renfrew, who proposed the Kurgan hypothesis or the Anatolian hypothesis to talk about the movement of people they called as Indo-Europeans. So their work is also embedded over here. And today we find genetics is one of the big things that people like David Reich from Harvard Medical School and other places, they have also come into the picture. They use the constraints imposed by Aryan invasion theory, by linguistic theory, by sociology, by archaeology to develop their mathematical models of genetics. And they claim to prove these things using genetics. However, these are circular arguments. These circular arguments are impacting the Hindu identity. So like I said, we have seen colonial, Eurocentric, missionary, leftist academia, Marxist frameworks. The insider frameworks have been evolving, but they are under severe attack by these frameworks. Whenever an insider comes with a definition of history or challenging some of these notions, we see labels of revisionist, Hindutva, saffron, fascist, and other things. They greet the emic scholarship, in addition to exclusionary gatekeeping. So for the last 50 years, the Marxists have ensured that no Indic thinking person is there in any academia position of value. You cannot publish your papers in any journal if you subscribe to Indic way of thinking. The only way you can get published is if you go with the frameworks that these people have put over here. So there's gatekeeping in addition. But I think we have to continue fighting using an evidence-based narrative. That is what I do, evidence-based narrative, to show that the narratives that these people have got is utterly wrong. Now, how did we get here? What is this Aryan invasion theory, and what kind of linguistic frameworks have been used? So we see that initially, if something called comparative linguistics is brought about. Comparative linguistics compares the phonology, syntax, morphology of related languages. For example, they'll take 100 common words in each language. This is called the Swadesh list. For example, words like eat, run, milk, dairy, all those kind of things. They use those and try to find out which is the related word in some other language. The problem is it is subjective, because the same word can have 2 or 3 meanings in a language. So which will you take? That is the problem. It is informal, lacks testability, and it also fades if languages are compared to ancient. People also use lexicostatistics based on word list, identify cognates, and determine distance between languages. And it does not construct a proto-language, but it is suitable for cognates and such things. Glotto chronology is a mathematical way of doing things with an assumed rate of change, how a word will change from one sound to another by a mutation rate of change. They're able to work a chronological relationship. Then they evolved things like sound laws. For example, A greater than B means sound A is older than sound B, which is recent. So Grimm's law are things like, for example, ba is older than ba, then older than pa, older than fa. Da is older than da is older than da, ta, or theta. So things of this nature. So they evolved laws like this to show how it might have changed from one language to another. So the irony of all these things is when they wanted to reconstruct the Proto-Indo-European language, the only data they had was Sanskrit. So Vedic Sanskrit provided the words that was used as data along with present day German, French, and other Spanish and other things and Latin and such things to try to reconstruct what the relationships are. So using Sanskrit as data, they worked backwards and got a Proto-Indo-European language. Then they assumed that as a fact. So the reconstruction was assumed as a fact, and they said, as a consequence of this fact, we see that Sanskrit derives by these sound laws. So it's an absurd way of doing science with circular arguments. Unfortunately, This is not challenged. This is what our children are studying in, as a consequence of these frameworks. You get Aryan invasion theory, and they study these things. So we have, as a consequence, the reconstructed Proto-Indo-European language, from which we got Balto-Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, Italic, Hellenic, Indo-Iranian. And from here, they say we get Iranian and Indic. And from Indic, you get Sanskrit, from which you get all of these languages. So this is the kind of idealization which has been brought about by something we call comparative method, by using all these notions I said in the previous slide. So today, the battle lines have become very, very hardened. On the one side, you see people who are saying out of India. This is the insider scholar, the scholar who understands history, evidence-based, is saying that there is no migration or invasion to India, there is out of India. On the other side, there are the Euro scholars and other frameworks, which is in our textbooks. They say, no, there is an Aryan invasion or migration to India. So they talk past each other. This side, they say, Harappa archaeology does not show any sign of invasion. This side, they say, maybe it was a migration, not an invasion. This side says, Harappa trade material is found in Mesopotamia, Central Asia. So the implication is trade is what spread languages. On this side, they say, no, migration came with the domestication of the wild horse, invention of chariot and iron, and that's what spread the Indo-European language. On this side, it says, well, you're talking about horse. The Rigvedic horse has got 34 ribs, and the Central Asian horse has got 36 ribs. On this side, they say Rigvedic people did not know how to count. They mistook 34 for 36. On this side, they say, oh, well, Rigveda is mentioning Saraswati River in many mandalas as a powerful river flowing to the ocean. On this side, they say, no, Saraswati River is mythical. It never existed. So this is the kind of debate we have. Additionally, these people say things like the Slavic and the Celts had Vedic deities. How is that possible? This proves Sanskrit came to India from Central Asia. They say Greek stories are similar to Hindu Purana stories. How? This proves Sanskrit came to India from Central Asia. They say Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran have Sanskrit in the Mitanni and the Hittite cultures. How is that possible? Again, it proves Sanskrit came from Central Asia. Then some other people say Rig Veda says Indra had a yellow beard. How is that possible? That means Indra must have been a European, and therefore Sanskrit came to India from Central Asia. So these are the kind of battlegrounds that are present even today in academia, where people are trying to say this. Now, when people say the languages have got an ancestor called Proto-Indo-European, then the next idea was, because we say Proto-Indo-European language was there, these people lived in the homeland in Central Asia. What was their religion? So they said maybe they had a religion called PIE religion, Proto-Indo-European religion, and they wanted to see what are the elements of that religion. In order to see the elements of that early religion, they evolved a field which they called comparative mythology. Today, this field has evolved, and there are 4 schools. One school says the stories that are there in the Puranas or in the Vedas, in the Scandinavian stories, in the Norse stories, in the Celtic stories and others, they say these are meteorological approach, weather phenomena and such things are explanation for Maxa for natural phenomena. Example of that is Max Muller, who sees it that way. Some other people like George Fraser, they said it's a ritual approach that views the stories explaining rituals and religious practices. Dumézil came saying it's a functional approach that views stories reinforcing social behaviors using the framework of social order. Then there's another framework that says structuralism approach that views stories around the concept of dualistic opposition. Whatever it is, we see that the insider view is utterly missing because he's not allowed at the table. The practitioner, the Vedic scholar, the Pandit is not allowed at the table to explain the Vedic explanation of these phenomena because Adhikara has been removed. That is why we are seeing this field has evolved. It is supporting the frameworks of Aryan invasion and such things. And an implication is European deities are the ones that are there in the Vedas, and we are still worshipping Vedic European deities. At this point, I will stop and turn it over to co-author Sitaram Ayyagari. Sitaram Garu, please take over. Are you on mute?
Yes, I am on mute. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raj. I think that was the issue we tried to address. Of course, as Raghavan shown you on the slides, there are so many issues we have. We cannot attack everything in 20 minutes of time that has been allocated to us in Waves conference. So we took one particular issue, that is yellow beard Indra. So in Rig Veda, they shown us what they took the one translation from Griffith, and they said Griffith interpreted that verse as Indra having a yellow beard. And it seems this the Greek philosophy also has a god called Indra, who has got a yellow beard. And this yellow beard is Niti Talali Natyanali man Telugulo cheppinattuga akkada yellow beard undi, ikkada yellow beard undi. So there is yellow beard, here yellow beard, and since they have got this lot of muzzle, all kinds of muzzle in the sense economically, politically, then they said, okay, our God came to India and all Indian gods are ours. See, very nice, right? Very simple inference. Just one word they misinterpreted, and they suddenly all our gods became descended from Europe. Okay. So to counter that, actually what I did is, with my little knowledge and Sanskrit and little knowledge and Vedam, is that what exactly they see in Rig Vedam to support their argument. And then I put my framework analysis, which we'll see shortly. And I said, then I put my interpretation, and we will conclude based on my interpretations in the end. So be patient, because it's a little technical, and the slide will be in English, so you can read. It's only 4 slides. But since it is Nalla Telugu Vennela, and we have got a lot of Telugu people, and I have got it is very easy at my Telugu too, so I may switch back and forth between Telugu and English. It may not take too long. It may be another 10-15 minutes. Rajvedam Garu, next slide, please. So my framework and analysis is, first, when we take the words, first of all, Sanskrit, as you all know, there are two types. One is Vyavaharika Samskritam. The other one is Vedic Samskritam. Vyavaharika Samskritam is simple Sanskritam, where you can communicate, you can write essays, you can write poetry also. That's all good. But when you come to the Vedic Sanskritam, this is especially for analyzing Vedic verses, Vedic and related Vedic scriptures. Like it could be a Purana, it could be an Itihasa, and things like that. You have to have a framework in mind. For the framework, first take the verse and identify the subject first, what it is trying to address. It is not that simple Namavachakam. Okay, it is not simple the subject in the sense it's not in the like Ramaha is a subject. No. What is trying to say? Then if the subject is, say for example, it is a sun, it is talking about a moon, it's talking about astrology, it's talking about astrophysics, or whatever it is, first identify the subject, and then you get as much knowledge as possible regarding that subject. They talk about the sun, know about everything about sun. What is its density? How long? What is the age of the sun? How it is made of? What gases it's made of? How long it will take from one particular sun ray after its generation? How long it will take to come to the peripheral of the sun? Everything you have to know as much as possible, and nothing is complete. So as much as possible. Once you know all the knowledge of the subject, then apply that knowledge to interpret the verse. Okay, so that is the framework. And another thing is, anything Vedam, anything related to Vedam, we should never ever say somebody X is translated the Veda or translated the verse. Should never say that. It is only the Bhashya or the interpretation. Because even Shankaracharya, Shankara Bhashyam, that's called Shankara Bhashyam. It is a Shankara's interpretation. It is not, Shankara never translated any verse. He put whatever he thinks, words, meaning for the words, subject of the word, and he did his interpretation. So do Madhvacharya did. So do everyone did. So many people did so many interpretations. These are all their respective Bhashyas, except Mr. Griffith and Max Muller. They translated Vedas. So we will see what they have done and why it is wrong. So next slide, please. So what is our Vedic literature? How do we approach interpret these Vedas? First, what is Vedam? So we have got 4 Vedas. Actually, it is one Veda, but it's in one perspective it is 4 Vedas. In one perspective it is 3 Vedas. But then we have got this Brahmana Pata, Upanishad Pata, Samhit Pata, and Aranyaka. These are 4 different shakhas, not shakhas, 4 different whatever. So altogether, it is every Vedam has got all these 4, and altogether it is called Shruti. Then we have got the limbs of Vedas, we call Siksha, Chandasa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Kalpa, and Jyotisha. As you know, Siksha is very simple. Siksha deals with the study of sounds and pronunciation, Udatta, Anudatta, avanni untai. Then the Chandas. Chandas is basically the meter part of it, the rhythms part of it. How many syllables one verse should have. That is matral and వ్యాకరణ భాష్యం అంతా అందులో వస్తుంది. నెక్స్ట్ కమ్స్ ఇన్ వ్యాకరణ భాష్య. వ్యాకరణం అనగానే అందులోకి విపరీతమైన భాష్యం ఉంటుంది. అందులో వ్యాకరణ శాస్త్రే డీల్స్ విత్ ద స్టడీ ఆఫ్ ద వర్డ్ అండ్ సెంటెన్స్ స్ట్రక్చర్. Then comes to the Nirukta. It is basically the meaning of complex words, how to interpret them. If we win a phrase, how to interpret the phrase. Then comes to the Kalpa Shastra. Kalpa Shastra deals with the rituals, how to perform a particular ritual, things like that. Then the Jyotish Shastra. Jyotish Shastra is basically for the studies of heavenly bodies and to find the auspicious time to perform these particular rituals as per the Kalpa Shastra. And as for the Kalpa Shastra, to effectively perform the yajna to get the proper results. For example, it could be a marriage, there is housewarming, kameshti yagas, any such related ones. Okay, so the main question is this knowledge, whatever we spoke, whatever we are depicting here, is enough? Obviously not enough. To translate any verse of the Vedas, all this knowledge is necessary but not sufficient. What is sufficient? As I said, the framework. You should have a lot knowledge on so many shastras. So, and also our framework of our educational framework, the Sanatana Dharma, Sanatana framework is completely open. It is highly open. Okay, can you go to the next slide, please, Raj? So what kind of knowledge you should have to interpret these verses? First thing is the culture, law of the land, history of the land, geography of the land, weather patterns of the land, and also the sciences, the traditional sciences, what we study, like physics, chemistry, biology, geology, medicine, particle physics, astrophysics, nuclear physics, anything that helps to understand that particular verse, you should have that knowledge. Okay, I mean, it may seem very odd. Why should I know geography of the land or seasons of the land? Yes, you should know the land, because in Aruna Prashna they talked about six rutus. But if somebody is sitting in Houston, we have got only 2 seasons. One is actual heavy summer, the other one is light summer. Vasavakala, the other one is a summer. It is one and the same thing in different languages, but it's all summer all the way. So if somebody writes a Vedam here, it has only one rutu. But if he talked about 6 rutus, that means he has to be Indian subcontinent, because everything is 2 months spaced. So you should know the weather patterns. Then you will understand what that verse is saying. If the verse is saying the three rutus, then it is not talking about the land, Indian subcontinent. It's talking about maybe some other land, something like that. So you should know a knowledge of all this in order to interpret that particular verse. So can we go to the next slide, please? So I took 2 mantras just to see how the Griffith interpreted this particular Rigveda mantras, 10th mandala, 23rd sukta and 4th mantra, and how the various other scholars who are traditional scholars with the different schools and different timelines with the different backgrounds interpret it. So it is a Rigveda mantra. I'm not a Rigvedi, I'm Krishna Yajurvedi, so I don't know how to properly read it, but I put this one. Hopefully you can read. So chinno vrushtiyudhyaha swa sanya indraha Sma Shruni Haritabhi Pushnute Ava Veti Sukshayam Sute Madhudidhunoti Vato Yatha Panam. These are all the Padavibhaga. So look at the first column. I put the subject, context, adjectives, actions, and interpretation. Then Ralph, it is knowledge. He put as a beard, sweet juice, and worshipper. That's the thing. What you for Smashruni, he took the beard thing. Harita, he took sweet juice, and worshipper, he took the whatever worshipper. And here the Sainacharya and Dr. Rangacharya as well as Bhattabhaskara took the same thing. He has got beard and mustache together, they said, and they said Soma juice instead of sweet juice. For Harita, they said Harita is Harita Haridvarnena Somena. For the Somena, Harita they interpret as Somarasa. Okay, then context. I am not sure what he is trying to say here, and his interpretation is here. His translation is right here. If somebody can make sense out of it, that's fine. But Sainacharya is very clearly mentioned. It is preparing for war on enemies. And Dr. Tulsiram is our written in 1900s, 20th century. He said he changed the topic. The context for him is not preparing for the war, but it is the agriculture. See, for him, it's not beard and mustache. Instead, he took it is a healthy green crops. Sasmruni he interpreted as the healthy green crops, and Soma as a life energy. Then action is a stirring and sprinkling. This is a shaking and sprinkling. And the adjectives he put it the green, happy homes and lives. So when he says he took the sweet juice, Indra throw drops of the moisture into yellow beard. So the adjective yellow he acquainted to the equated with this beard, assigned it to the beard. So then he said, okay, my God has yellow beard, and this verse is saying yellow beard, and Indra is also from Greek, right? So, but whereas the traditional translators, the practitioners who interpreted it a little bit, they interpreted it differently. And we have got the language where this Harita or Soma, you can interpret, you can use that word as many times as you want in the verse to put these adjectives. So Sainacharya did that Soma juice and Soma oil. So he took 2 times that Soma, he used the Soma for 2 times. One is as the rain lingers on the earth, Indra lingers his mustache and beard with yellow Soma oil. It is not his, this yellow color is assigned to oil instead of the beard. Then he enters into the sacred sacrificial fire. He drinks the sweet Soma juice. Now the Soma juice is again used, and this is to drink. If you interpret a sweet juice as I don't think anybody put a sweet juice on the beard and mustache. So this interpretation made him, I mean, conveniently made. I don't know whether it's knowingly made or unknowingly made, or I don't know, dubiously made, but he made that call, and he said, gods are the Hindu gods are came from Europe. So because he don't have any framework, he has got nothing in mind. He has got a dictionary, and he took the words and he started translating. He picked whatever it is, whatever is convenient for them, whatever he knows, and he just started putting the translation. Whereas similar framework in the framework mind, then I explained earlier, Dr. Tulsiram also did a completely different translation, but it is a valid translation in the sense he followed the framework. He identified the subject, he got the subject knowledge, and he put all the adjectives in the right place, and he came up with a meaningful interpretation. So with this knowledge, we will see another example. It is not just one example I'm criticizing. I am not framing with one verse. I'm not saying everything is wrong, but I analyzed around 10 of them, but with the time constraints, I only put 2 of them. Can we go to the next slide, please, Raj? So this is another mantra, which is very famous mantra. Almost every one of us know. This mantra is also available in Krishna Yajurveda, Rigveda, and Shukla Yajurveda also. Gauri Mimaya Salila Nitakshan Gyagapadi Dipadisha Chaduspadi Astabadi Navapadi Babhuvuchi Sahasrang Jaraparam Vyomaniti Vyomaniti whenever we conveniently used in different places. What is a subject? The subject itself is different for the different interpretations. For Griffith, he took literally it is cow. Okay. Then whereas Sainacharya, Dr. Rangacharya, and Bhatta Bhaskara, which is not mentioned here, they all took walk as the for Gauri. Okay. And also in particular, when they said walk, it is not just a sound, but it has got 4 gradations like Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikari. So we need to have, then when I said the subject knowledge, this is where the subject knowledge is useful. What is this walk? It is not just a sound that you and I make, not necessarily. It could be anything anything that belongs to the Para stage or Parashanti or Madhyama and Vaikari. And this particular interpretation, they took Madhyama Vaikari, Madhyama flavor, Madhyama gradation of the sound, walk. So what is it? What is it? So basically, Para is the stage where the voice manifests in prana, the life force. So the para voice is the source of the root ideas and thoughts. Then Pashyanti, the stage where the voice manifests in mind. In other words, one can visualize the meaning and the intention of the song. These 2 stages, he did not utter the sound yet. So there is an energy which is about to manifest a thought, and that's supposed to then the 3rd stage, the Madhyama stage, the stage where the voice manifests in Indriyas, the sound that has been produced by the source but not yet reached the receiver. At the 4th stage, the stage where the voice manifests in articulated expression, the sound has been produced, uttered, transmitted, and reached all the way to the receiver. So these are the 4 stages. Then in this particular verse, all the 3 translations took the Madhyama sound. That means it is produced, but you are not yet reached. Then the context, Griffith, I don't know. I mean, you can see his interpretation, his meaning in the bottom of the slide. But Sainacharya, Rangacharya, and Bhatta Bhaskara said it is the origin and spread of that particular divine walk. That's the subject. Ekapadi, Dvipadi, Chatushpadi, Ashtapadi, Navapadi means new. I mean, like, then I will come back. Then Tulsiram also took the subject Gauri as the light of consciousness. Then he drilled down his own framework and he went towards the enlightenment as the as per the Sanatana Dharma enlightenment. When I say enlightenment, nowadays everything is enlightenment. Everyone is talking about enlightenment, but I stick to Sanatana Dharma enlightenment. And also the new interpretation. And when I said it is our scriptures are completely open, our education system is open. That means new interpretations also can come as long as you follow the framework. So I interpreted the Gauri as a sunlight or electromagnetic radiation. Okay. So then I have to, it's not that out of nowhere I pick one word and I write my own stories. Not really. You have to set all the other words in the verse. Okay. So then he talks about the padas. When he talked about the padas, so Sainacharya said it's all directions, like north, west, east, south. And Tulsiram said, because it's for used towards enlightenment, these padas he attributed to Vedas and supporting scriptures. So he took the first pada as Vedam, as a whole knowledge, 2 parts as the knowledge of action, 4 padas as 4 Vedas, and 8 padas as 4 Vedas plus pair Upavedas, and 9th Veda as being the grammar, phonetics, astronomy, and everything he combined together. And 9th is towards the enlightenment stage. So either it could be 9, he explicitly mentioned, either it could be 9 or it could be any number. So when you see the progression, it is a simple mathematical progression. 1, 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 32. Nava means new. So if you call about mathematical progression, it is a progression. It's a continuous sequence. So it can, so there is a mathematics also involved in this particular verse, very simple. And when the Tulasira, when Sainacharya talks about, he talks about the directions. He talks about first pada is the divine walk, 2 padas connecting the clouds and the upper space. 4th padas is 4 major directions, 8 padas has 4 major directions and 4 intermediate directions, and the 9th pada is the upward direction spreading infinitely. Bahubhushi Sahasrakshar Parave Vyoman. It is going to the infinitely unlimited space. So that is the interpretation from traditionalists, and so whereas when we took about the Griffith, he took everything as literally dictionary meaning or whatever he of his choice. There is no framework. There is nothing. So he said, okay, Gauri is cow. He took the cow as Gauri, and he put Salilani as water. Sainacharya very clearly mentioned, do not get stuck with Salilani as water. It is not water. He explicitly mentioned Salilani as a divine, if you call it is primordial waters, but it is surely not water. Aham Salilam Pibami, no one will do that, even though it says water. Okay, it is water in a different plane. Okay, so he said, okay, there is so forming the water floods. Buffalo hath load 1-footed, 2-footed, 4-footed, and 8-footed, or 9 feet, 1,000 syllabled in sublime heaven. I don't know. I don't know how to interpret this story to say. I don't understand this. So whereas because he don't have any framework, all he has got a dictionary and started writing his own, and this has been sold entire West, including India. With your English translations is first and foremost, and when you type it English translations, this is the one you hit first. And looking at these particular translations, what kind of appreciation you will have for Vedas? What is so sacred about it? And also the another thing is, can you go back to the previous slide, please? And when he said, when the sweet juice is shed, he seeks the pleasant place and stirs the worshipper as wind disturbs the word. So he was so much confused on where to put what adjective and how. He's saying that Indra is stirring the worshipper. Why? Why would anybody stir the worshipper? Whereas the traditional translations very clearly mentioned he is stirring the beard. When you look at the Chiranjeevi movies or NTR movies or GMR movies, then we clearly see how when they speak, they stir their beard when they go for a war. Ramana, Arjuna, whatever, whoever is the warriors. So another thing is this hair culture. It is a Sanatana. We have got Surya has got big mustache, Indra has big mustache, what is it? Shanishwara has got mustache, Dharmaraja, Yamadharmaraja has mustache, and Rama has got put the what is it? He put some oil, right? Some oil for when he goes to the forest, right? Some milk. So we have got, that is the culture. He doesn't have any clue on that culture.
Marichettupalu.
Marichettupalu, correct. Thank you. Yeah, Marichettupalu. So Marichettupalu, see, Valmiki very explicitly mentions the process of how they do it and how they undone it. When they shaved it, when they shaved after when he's returning to Ayodhya. So that's the cultural part. So without knowing any of this, people started translating and selling that, and I have no problem. So what is the so big deal? Everyone has got everyone have what do you call voice of speech and liberty of expression, all kinds of stuff. Why can't anybody translate with this thing? Then we have a problem. So I will show you in the another slide. Can you do the last slide? Yeah, next slide. Next one. Yeah. See, this is the problem. Dangers of misinterpretation is this: lack of knowledge of Vedangas leads to misinterpretation. That leads to subject becomes mythology. Because if you look at the translations, it looks like a myth. Oh, okay, Indians believe, okay, that's believe, it's mythology. Then once the knowledge becomes optional, once they coin any subject as mythology, that immediately that knowledge becomes optional and taken away from mainstream education, and it becomes bedtime stories. And that slowly leads to the collapse of Shastras. And slowly it wipes out the source of knowledge and ultimately the culture of it. So this is the danger. I'm not questioning the liberty of translation. I'm questioning misinterpretation and misguiding of the translations. How dangerous those translations will be, especially when we talk about our Sanatana scriptures. With that, I will give back to Raj Vedam for conclusions.
Thank you, Sitaram Garu's excellent presentation on the danger of false interpretations based on translations. So we have presented today 5 frameworks that control the narration of Indian history and knowledge systems. I called out why the colonial, Eurocentric, missionary, leftist academia, and Marxist, what kind of frameworks they came with, what was their motivation, why do they write the history of India and interpret our knowledge systems in a certain way. So have highlighted all of these things. And I've also pointed out that the insider framework is missing because of exclusion. So the Vedic Pandit, the scholar, and the person who's experienced this history for generations and generations, we don't have a voice in defining our own history, our own knowledge systems, because of exclusion by these frameworks. So we also saw that the linguistic framework, which is developed out of these, that has given rise to the Proto-Indo-European language construct, from which we have Aryan invasion and other such things. This PIE language has given rise to the PIE religion construct and this notion of comparative mythology, out of which now there are absurd ideas that the Vedic deities had their origins outside of India, maybe in Central Asia or Europe and places like that. And Sitaram Garu has shown one should not even use the word translation over here, because Bhashya is what we are doing. It's got to be interpretation. So any kind of translations done without deep knowledge leads to absurd interpretations, as he has shown in the case of Griffith, the 2 translations, one with the yellow beard and the other one with respect to Gauri. So we have highlighted today a couple of common translation problems and shown the deep epistemic errors in them. Unfortunately, these are the kind of errors that have found its way into Western academia. And whenever the battlefield comes, these are the kind of Griffith translations that people put forth to defend their positions. So it's critical that the Indian scholars need to understand the problems in Griffith translation and continue forward to challenge some of these notions. So that is the end of our talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So you can take questions if there is any.
Yeah.
Then you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Raj Vedam Garu. Thank you so much, Sitaram Garu. That was very enlightening. Any questions from audience side?
శాస్త్రి గారు అడుగుతున్నారండి. చల్లా శాస్త్రి గారు. ఆయన అన్మ్యూట్ చేయాలి.
Sitaram and Raj Vedam, have you guys considered reading Aurobindo Shastri's Aurobindo's work on Vedas? He did a comparative study between Griffith and what he thought the interpretation is.
Dr. Tulsiram is actually also from the same school
Of Aurobindo.
Aurobindo school. I did not literally see his own translation, but he's from the Aurobindo school.
Because Aurobindo did a lot of work. Aurobindo also started just like all of us, reading Griffith's books, then figured out it's utter nonsense, and he gave a very good interpretation.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I have the books, but it takes so much time, one by one. Yeah. Shastri garu,
ఏమైనా ప్రశ్నలు ఉన్నాయండి, అడగండి.
How much time you have taken for this research work?
Dr. Raj Vedam, that question to you.
How much time you have taken for this research working?
Oh, thank you, sir. So I started very early. The truth is, even during school days, I used to understand that whatever we learned at home is different from what they're teaching in the school. So it was our exposure at home that made us question from very early in life. My real research started maybe after I started my PhD in Oregon State. So at that time, I saw the differences between our society and the American society. And I internalized all that into a curiosity to learn about India. So Oregon State University Library, I must have read every book on India. So that was a starting point. So more than 30 years I've been reading. And for the last 10 years or so, I have tried to encapsulate the learnings. I started giving talks from 2012 onwards. From 2016 on YouTube, several of my talks are there. I have given more than 120 talks in India and in USA on my findings on history. I address it through multidiscipline, not just in one area, but I try to take archaeology, linguistics, astronomy, genetics, knowledge transfers, many different areas. I take them all and I try to show where are the contradictions between what these frameworks are saying and where the evidence is. So as a scientist, I'm saying that we should go for an evidence-based narration of Indian history. So that is what I'm promoting in all the talks that I've been giving. I've also been giving history workshops for high school teachers in India. I've given more than 15 workshops so far since 2016, including in Telangana. I've done several of them. We've also tried to correct textbooks in Texas Education Agency, as well as in Telangana. Even in Telangana, we have reviewed the textbooks for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. We have given 150-page recommendation on where the changes must come in the textbook. And in the current 2019 onwards, some of our changes have been used. 60% of our changes, they have used textbook committee for SCRT in Telangana. But the remaining ones are very difficult. They are scared to touch it because the frameworks are tightly protecting it. The Marxist, leftist, they are not allowing the narrative to change. So even the textbook directorate in Telangana is scared to change them. So this is the situation. So I am continuing to popularize the findings. Wherever I get the opportunity, I talk to audiences like this. And so I request everybody, please search for my name on YouTube. You'll get a lot of my talks. Raj Vedam, you go and type it on YouTube, you'll get a lot of my talks. So I please request you all to see those talks and popularize it in your circles. If you like those ideas, please share those ideas.
One question, please.
Wonderful. Very nice. It's a good work.
Yeah, thank you.
God bless you. Keep doing it. And if necessary, you try to publish in any international journal.
Yes. So we are trying.
It is worth doing it.
We are trying to get our works out in journals as well as writing books.
And Sitaram Ayyagari will give you motivating quotes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on my part, when Raj Vedam and I frequently talk on these such topics, and one time he gave me, this topic, he brought his topic, and he said that could be utter nonsense. So then I went to the Rigveda, even though I don't know anything about Rigvedam. I studied Rigvedam. I found a guru, and I found some knowledge on Rigvedam, and then I started studying some verses, and then I found these particular words, what he's talking about, and then I said, oh, this something went wrong. So then this is my own research. A number of hours I put this one to come up with this kind of interpretation to make it appeal to the scientific community and conferences, because usually we don't study something like this, but we have to bring our educational system. What is our educational system to interpret these verses? So I put together our educational system, the importance of our educational system, not only importance in terms of learning, but also following for interpretation. So I put together this work. So, and we are planning to do much more in the future.
Okay, any question from Ramarao garu?
Ramana garu, sorry.
Ramarao Kannaganti garu.
Okay.
You have any question?
Ramana garu, cheppandi.
Yeah, to both of you, you and Dr. Have you studied the works of the great Kota Venkatachalam garu, who had proved the happening of Mahabharata war, and along with Rajatarangini of Kalhana Pandit, he has taken the history of Kashmir and then how the Westerners had misinterpreted or spoiled our history by interpreting in their own way, and saying that Maurya Chandragupta and Samudra Chandragupta were named as one. That Chandra Cortes is more near to Samudragupta than Maurya Chandragupta, and there was a gap of 1,500 years between these two kings. Such words. Have you done anything about this?
Yes. In fact, my own understanding of this battlefield was from Kota Venkatachalam's. So his translation of his Telugu books in English that is available. These are the ones that expose me to how to do the counter attack, how to do with evidence. Here is evidence. So till that time, I was exposed only to the Western narrative. So reading works like Kota Venkatachalam and more recent times, Vedvi Raryaji and several other authors, these have made our understanding much more clear where the problems came, what methodology these people have used, where has it failed, and trying to see how we can reconstruct our history. Yes, sir. So my own understanding owes a lot to Kota Venkatachalam's work also.
Great.
Yeah, I have got around 10 books from Kota Venkatachalam works, and I haven't gone through some of them, but some of them are very, very deep because I don't know much about the astronomy and astrology. So I'm learning now. So hopefully I will understand. I will come up to his and understanding because this is not hobby. It is not like bedtime books. Like you appreciate. I'm not studying appreciating his work. I am studying to straighten the history, straighten the chronology. So I have to spend more time on every page and every verse, whatever. I mean, every his work. So it takes a lot of time, and also I had to judge his work as well. So because I cannot be emotional when I go to a conference. So for example, we went to Delhi for a conference, and there is no emotions there. I mean, because emotions doesn't work in a conference. Emotions cannot be put on in international papers. So for that, we need to study, we need to discuss, and that's where we are right now. We are definitely going through a lot of scrutiny of our own scriptures first. Our own interpretations. There are emotional interpretations as well. So we got to keep them aside, and
Thank you so much, Sitaram Garu. Thank you so much, Rajvedam Garu. I have one final question, a small question from my side. I read it somewhere like Agastya's wife Lopamudra. She came from Siberia. So even now we can see people with the name Lopamudrova in Siberia, in that area. So is that true? I mean, this I read it in some, the Marxist kind of.
There are so many Indian names in Russian names. Our Puranic names you will find there.
Yes, so absolutely correct. So there is definitely a Vedic connection between various parts of the world, Slavic nations, including Russia, Bulgaria, and all these countries. Definitely there's a connection. We know that from the Sanskrit roots. I have not personally looked up Lopamudra to find out origins and this story. But as far as Agastya is concerned, yes, I've studied Agastya's accounts a lot in terms of geological ideas, Ice Age ideas, astronomy ideas, linguistic ideas, the idea that Agastya got Tamil grammar into the south, going to Sangam period, about the notions of Kumari Kandam. These are all intertwined ideas, and there are some shared memories and remembrances in the oral traditions of our country from various parts, which we can painstakingly put together and form a hypothesis that the evidences from here are fitting into an idea. So in my own work, I am assuming, I'm coming up with the notion that Agastya should probably be placed around 12,000 years ago, based on Ice Age records, based on linguistic records, based on several others. I gave a talk very recently on this one too. There's a professor called Ramaswamy in Madurai, I guess. He published a paper in 2020, and his paper was based on his 45 years of experience. He's been working on Pumpuhar. Pumpuhar is an ancient port on the east coast of India. It is above Taragambadi and below Puducherry. So on this place, he has done research for more than 45 years. Over the last 2-3 years, he's also got the grants to do underwater archaeology. And what he has found, tremendous kind of things. In Current Science, August 2020, there's a paper, please search for that. He's saying Poompuhar has got evidence of shoreline going back 18,000 years. And he's showing how the shoreline shifted from 18,000 years to 15,000 years to 9,000 years, 7,000 years to 3,000 years to present shoreline. All this because of submergence events. The sea level has risen, has fallen, risen, fallen based on ice age records, which we can correlate with known Younger Dryas ice age periods. It's fascinating. Not only that, he is saying 25 kilometers outside the current coastline of Poompuhar, there's 125 meter depth. That is where he's found an ancient harbor. That harbor was man-made. It is not a natural harbor. It is a man-made harbor, which opens so many questions. Why did ancient Indians need a harbor 15,000 to 18,000 years ago? Did they have ships? How did they make those ships? Did they have iron to make the ships, the nails for the ship? How did they do that? And what were they doing with ships? Were they trading? If there's trading, there's commerce. And how on earth was commerce done in the era we are told barter exchange was done? So many questions come up based on his findings. So I'm putting together the Ice Age, astronomy, several other things, and proposing a time frame for Agastya should be around 12,000 years.
So are you also coincidentally dating Ramayana by saying that?
So Ramayana indirectly it comes. I have not ventured into Itihasa dating because it's, as you know, it's very contentious. There's a lot of battles going on the correct dating. There's one cluster of dates for Mahabharata in 3000 BC. Some outliers are there, outliers in 5560, some in 1700 BC. Similarly for Ramayana, outlier is around 10,000 BC and so on. I am not, but I am open to all research. I am a multidisciplinary person. I bring in the records of Ice Age, astronomy, geological evidence, and various other things, including our own itihasas, descriptions over there, and try to have the best understandings. I'm not going to put forth a date as such. So I can now say Agastya, probably 10,000 BC is the current. The second thing to say is, if there was an Agastya mentioned in Ramayana and an Agastya mentioned in Mahabharata, are they the same Agastya? Or is there a title? So these are questions we don't know. We don't have good answers for these things.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Just one final question.
I think Chitan Rajgar has a question. Rajgar.
Mute lo unnaranడి. You are on mute.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, I have to change.
ఇప్పుడు వినిపిస్తుంది.
Rajgar, వినపడుతుంది.
Okay, now you should be able to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, just curious, is there any update on Dwaraka and the underwater discoveries they found? Apparently, there is a lot of resistance in exploring further and really identifying what that is all about.
Yes. So Dwaraka, 1963, Deccan College, Pune, they started the excavation. 1963 they started, and they came out with certain ideas. These were not taken up at all until around 1980 or so. S.R. Rao and others, they proposed some investigations there. And I think going a little later too, there was a period when Janata Party was in power in 1979, 77. That is the time frame when S.R. Rao obviously got funds to do. And by bringing in the politics, I'm also saying the interest from the political establishment. So around 77 to 80, S.R. Rao discovered certain things, and that was also stopped. Then again, during the Vajpayee time frame, the NIO, National Institute of Oceanography, they got funds to do sonar of Gulf of Cambay, which is where Dwaraka is and other places. So they published a paper in episodes in 2003, Kanholi and Badrinarayan. Those are the name of the scientists who published it. And they said sonar has discovered a 9-kilometer long city wall, which is 40 meters under the current sea level. And they also got from that material layer, they got a piece of wood, which they carbon dated in Germany as well as in Hyderabad. They carbon dated it, and the date came to around 9,000 years before present, which could be a date for that material layer. So they published these papers, and pretty soon we know that BJP, the first one, they went off, and the UPA government came. UPA government, what they did is, when all these noises were coming, they hired a professor from Assam who's also an underwater archaeologist. He was brought in to do several investigations in Dwaraka because there was a lot of public interest over there.
Right.
But my belief is he was brought in to shut the chapter, because he did not investigate where you should investigate it. All the ice age and geological information is telling us that 15,000 years ago, the sea level was 122 meters below. He did not investigate that. He investigated 1 kilometer outside the coast of Dwaraka, where the sea level is around 40 meters, 15 meters, and so on. And he closed the chapter. He wrote a book saying nothing is present. Nothing is there. And he discarded the piece of wood saying it was rubbish. Nothing is just a piece of wood, nothing more to it. And the UPA government closed the chapter at that point. So this was a cover-up job at that point. This is my opinion, by the way. I feel strongly about this.
That is also why I'm asking the question, because
yes,
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did not go where he should have gone, which is 122 meter depth. I have drawn a map and shown 113 kilometers. 113 kilometers from today's Dwaraka. That is where he should have investigated. But because they did not have technology or whatever, this man did not go there. He studied outside the coast of Dwaraka in a shallow place. And this professor wrote a book also. It's available online, not online, but you can buy it. And where he is shut down this whole investigation. At the same time, the UPA government shut down NIO, which is a CSIR lab. Funding was closed, and funding was given to Muziris in Kerala, to show that St. Thomas had come to Kerala in a certain period of time in this port of Muziris. So funding has been shifted from there to some other dubious topic. And our current BJP government has not restarted this investigation for God knows what.
That's what I was worried about. Yes. Yeah.
It has squandered away the opportunity. If there are 2 terms, still nothing has been done. They should have commissioned NIO and other places to continue investigating in 40 meter depth, 80 meter depth, 90 meter depth, and so on. So this gentleman, who's I won't say his name, Professor Tripathi, but he found some artifacts in the shallow waters, but these artifacts are dated to Harappa period. Harappa period is 2000 BC and so on. And he stopped his investigation at that point.
If only they can do what you see on National Geographic, drain the ocean. Just one project that will completely clear all the doubts about not only the existence, but the historical, factual information of such importance. Ramasetu is one, Dwaraka is the other. These are real places where you can find. I don't know any of you have seen Drain the Oceans episodes on National Geographic. They use the technology to electronically drain away the ocean and pick every inch of the site that they are discovering.
Yes, that is technology available today to do it.
Amazing technology, amazing technology.
Yes. So I was excited when I read Professor Ramaswamy's paper, because if he's showing a harbor present in Pumpuhar in 15,000 years ago, and he's declaring it as man-made based upon the ocean currents, based on the mapped structures and such things, if that is true, he's also saying the same harbor model we can see in Dwaraka also. He's implying that the technology has moved northwards. And indeed, I don't think Indians would have deep sea. They wouldn't have gone deep sea to Indonesia and other places. They might have done coastal hopping from this place in Pumpuhar, maybe to Puducherry, Arikamedu. From Arikamedu, maybe in coast of Andhra, coast of Bengal, and places like that. And on this side, they have gone to near Kanyakumari, they have gone to Koilon, they have gone to Lothal, Baruk, and other places. So this kind of hopping of the coast might have been done by ancient Indians. If so, there definitely there's a technology that is present in Pumpuhar at a certain time, Dwaraka at a certain time. I don't see why it is not possible. If the technology existed, if there is evidence of underwater structures over here, definitely they must have been trading also. We only acknowledge Lothal because 2800 BC, and even today you can go to Ahmedabad and see the remains. We acknowledge Lothal, but we don't acknowledge these earlier ones.
I contacted National Geographic to see what it costs to sponsor a project. It's not much. It's about $10 to $15 million for a 4-day technological drain the ocean study of any given site. So they will send the ships from Australia, and they will do all the study, and it's not a.
Sir, may I request you to please write a project proposal on that and share it with me also.
I'm very, very naive on those things. It's somebody like Sudesh or Ayyagari, Sitaram. They are more qualified to do that. But I will see what I can do.
Yes, please, because we can make people aware of these. There's a lot of ignorance out there.
Right.
A lot of ignorance. So if there are methods and we can show this is how we can do it with a private party, cost 15 millions, I'm sure we can get some interest in the.
I'm sure there is enough money out there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very interesting discussion. Thank you so much. Chakkan కార్యక్రమం అండి. అందరికీ నమస్కారం. సహస్రావధాని కడిమెళ్ల వరప్రసాద్ గారికి, అలాగే కోట లక్ష్మీ నరసింహారావు గారికి, కన్నగంటి రామారావు గారికి, సీతారాం అయ్య గారికి, రాజ్ వేదం గారికి అందరికీ ధన్యవాదాలు. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్.
Thank you very much, Amma.
Thank you.
Thank you.